Hello, this video will show you how to create the inverted cut and fold pattern so you can make this Princess Donut book fold. To get started on this inverted book folding pattern, you'll need a few items. First, a pair of scissors that are both sharp and narrow, your favorite pencil, some sort of ruler. I prefer to use the one that I have in my shop that's a printable ruler. It does need to be in centimeters with millimeters. A piece of cardstock that is cut to your specific dimensions. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Your printed out pattern, your book, and something that is both flat and heavy to use to weigh down the pages when you start to fold. I prefer to use a rock. It's this, it used to be a candle holder, but turned out to be the perfect thing to use for my book folding, and I've been using it for about 10 years now. Once you have all your materials, we're ready to get started. To get started with your pattern, take your book and face it towards you. Open it up and take the first end page and just fold it back. Then you can take your rock or whatever it is that you're using as your paper weight to hold the page down for you. Next, take your ruler, and I like to just insert it a few pages in to the book and line it up so that the edge of the page is the edge of the ruler. My particular ruler starts with 0, and I always line the 0 up to the edge of the book page. So now you take your pattern, and the way that you read your pattern is the first page is going to be page 1. Now that's going to be whatever page for whatever pattern you've chosen. The first page is always the first actual page of the book. It's not going to be always numbered the first page, but that's where we start. And you'll see that there are 2 measurements here. So those 2 measurements are the ones that we're going to measure on our page and mark. So the first measurement is 17.9. I'll find 17.9 with my ruler and mark it on the page, and then 18.3. Now, you don't have to make your marks very big or dark or deep, just enough to let you know when you come back to start doing the cutting and folding. We move on to the next page, and I cross it out on my pattern. The next page is 17.7. and 18.5. We'll cross that out, move on to the next page. And in this way, you mark your pattern. Usually you start off with just a few measurement marks, even on detailed patterns like this Princess Donut. And as you move deeper into the pattern, you'll notice that you'll have more measurement marks. So we move on to page 11 of the pattern here, and you can see there are 4 marks now. So again, we just mark all of the numbers, all of the different measurement marks. So 17.3, 17.7, 17.8, and 18.9. And you just continue until the entirety of your book is completely marked. Sometimes when you're working on a book fold that's as detailed as this one is, you will have pages like this page 67 here that has multiple lines of numbers per page. You continue to do the same thing that you've been doing on your pattern, just I recommend slowing down and remembering to be precise and accurate. We'll always start with the smallest number, and your page will end with the largest number. So for instance, 8.9 here will still begin here on our page. And for page 67, 19.7 will end at the bottom of our page. Now, if you'll notice, there are a lot of tiny marks on this one, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, etc. So for this particular page, and honestly going forward with this pattern on all the other pages, you need to remember to be precise, and you need to remember to be accurate. Otherwise, your final product will not be as defined as you would like it to be. So keep erasers handy. It's always nice to have a good eraser in case you make a mistake. Once you have completed marking your book, it's time to start doing the cut and folds. So here we'll make sure we have our rock, our scissors, and our cardstock handy. Now I usually like to cut my cardstock about 1 centimeter in depth. So what I mean by that is when I open up my book and I lay the cardstock in, there's about 1 centimeter of space between the edge of the book and the edge of the cardstock. This will be a guide that I will use to make sure that all of my cuts are the same depth. So for this pattern, we're going to go ahead and just fold this end page and get it out of the way. This is that sturdier piece of kind of cardstock material that's found in the book. It's not really part of our design. Grab my rock and hold the pages down. So for my first page, in a traditional fold, you would typically fold from the corner down to your marking page for a 90-degree fold. With this particular one, we're going to do an inverted fold, which means we are not going to make our first fold at 90 degrees. We're going to take our cardstock and take our scissors. Now for this page, I don't know if you can tell or not, but the glue to the binding is very tight right here. This page is more stuck to the hardcover. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it here for about 1 centimeter in. Some other folders like to take their scissors and put a mark on their scissors that shows the depth of cutting. That's something you could do as well with like a Sharpie or whatever. But I always like to just use my cardstock. Once you've made your cuts on your marks, you go back in and fold that tab down that you've cut. So those were 2 measurement marks that you had on your pattern, and you just make those 2 shallow little cuts and fold the tab down. For this page, that one was easy. We just tuck it away and keep moving. Our second page, we do the same thing. Make your 2 cuts and fold your tab in and continue. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this until we get to the page that has multiple cuts in it and show you how we handle that. Because when there's only 2 marks, it's a lot easier to do than when you have multiples. This is our last page with just 2. And we'll move on to our first page with multiple marks. So this particular page has 4 marks to it. And so we'll do the same thing we've done before. We take our scissors and our cardstock and we just make 4 cuts right into the page. And now we start with an alternating pattern. So this first tab, we will fold. The second tab that we've cut, we leave plain. We don't do anything to it. And then we fold that third tab. And so for all the rest of the pages, we will continue that alternating fold, unfold, fold, unfold, fold, unfold, and it winds up making our pattern for us. So for this particular one, we can see that this is going to be the beginnings of that fur from our image here. And you can kind of follow along with the image, and you can see that, that this is going to be kind of where we're working right here. And then we continue on to the rest of the pages. We'll make our cuts. And then go back in, and you start with the first tab that you've cut and fold, skip the next one, fold the next one. And you continue to do that for the rest of the book. So I'm going to skip forward just for the purpose of this video to a page that has multiple cuts on it. So for this particular page, we have several tiny little cuts that we need to do. So again, using your cardstock, using your scissors, we go back through and we cut. So really the measurement part of this process kind of makes or breaks the entire pattern, because if you mess up on your measurements, then your pattern, when you go to cut and fold, is going to be a little wonky. So I always suggest making sure that you kind of go slowly with your markings, making sure that you are precise and accurate as you measure and you mark. That way you get the results that you want in the end. So that way when you're cutting, it's a little more autonomous. You don't have to focus on it as much as when you are marking your book. I personally like to listen to audiobooks or put on a movie that I'm familiar with, or listen to a podcast or something. But now that we have our page, you can see it's almost like a fringe. There's so many little tiny little cuts with this one. But we do the same exact thing we've done before. You start with your first tab and fold it over, giving it a nice good press. Then you move on to your next tab. Sometimes I like to use like a dental tool, a dental cleaning tool. Sometimes I'll use my pencil or a fingernail to help me separate out these cuts. But again, for these that have very tiny little cuts, you want to go slowly, just so you can make sure that you are getting every other tab folded. So see, I'm folding every other tab here and leaving these out. And this is what is going to wind up making the pattern of Princess Donut. And just like that, you continue with the rest of the book until you are all finished.